All right, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on managing call center delivery of financial advice. My name is Tim Kehrer. I'm with Kehrer Bielan Research and Consulting. We'll be starting today's event in just a few minutes. We'll pause to let a few more people join. While we're waiting, I'd like to fill you in on a couple of ways that you all in the audience can get your questions and comments to us today. One is by clicking the raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen. That'll allow you to join today's virtual roundtable. I can bring you onto the screen if you're set up for video, or you can join just by audio only. That's really the best way to join today's conversation. You can get your question in and have any back and forth. But if you prefer, you can also send us your questions and comments by using the chat function. We'll, as a roundtable, we'll all be keeping an eye on those as they come in. So whichever way you choose to do it, we hope that you will join today's conversation. Looks like the room is filled up nicely. So once again, my name is Tim Kehrer. I'm with Kehrer Bielan Research and Consulting. Thank you for joining today's webinar on managing call center delivery of financial advice. We're pleased at Kehrer Bielan to be hosting today's event. We host all of our webinars and back in the era when we used to do these things in person, we used to hold those, for the benefit of those that chose to attend. And to all of you who've tuned in today, we really believe that it'll enhance the value of today's event to you if you join in. So once again, use the raise your hand function or the chat function to join today's conversation. We couldn't be doing any of this today without the support of our sponsors. I'd like to thank them. Our sponsors for today are Ameriprise Financial Institutions Group, Asset Map, and The Standard. Once again, welcome. With that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our principals, Peter Bielan. Peter.
Thank you, Tim, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is, by all account, our 16th virtual call this year, really starting in April. So, we appreciate you all that have joined multiple ones of these, that have participated in our data requests and our surveys, have been on the panels and found any way at all to be involved in it, because this year, it's really been the way that we've communicated as an industry. And based on the number of these we've had, the people that have joined, and the feedback we've received, it's been an effective way to get through 2020, to keep our businesses going, to keep the important things front and center of discussion, learn from best practices, share data, and really have interaction like we're going to have today with this panel. So thank you for doing that. We started this study group, call centers, 3 years ago. And when we did it 3 years ago, it was a small number of financial institutions and attendees that participated. Some of you here today were part of that. And there was a strong message of the need to continue that. We continued it as this business still hadn't taken form as it has today, and participated and did it last year. And this year, we've seen tremendous growth in requests from firms as to what others are doing with call centers, the growth of this industry. The data that we've received doubled from this year over last year. So we'd like to think we were ahead of the game a couple of years ago when we started this, but more importantly, we like to make sure that we're there for you as this now becomes truly an important and core piece of our delivery within our financial institutions going forward. As we think this is one of those changes that this unusual year brought on that won't necessarily go away It's just now has really enabled it to be more prominent and will continue. So we're glad to be part of it and having this session here today. As we've done on others, we like to do it in a roundtable format as if we were all together. Okay, so with that in mind, the group that we have in our virtual roundtable today, Brian Dombrowski from BMO Harris Financial Advisors. Brian, welcome. Tom Dowd from the CUNA Brokerage Services. Tom, welcome. Kevin Driscoll from Navy Federal Financial Group. H. Adam Holt, one of our sponsors from Asset Map. Colin Lewis from Huntington Financial Advisors, soon to be a larger organization. Congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
Mark McGivilray, another one of our sponsors from the Standard, and Kelly Zanstra from Ameriprise, another one of our sponsors and sponsor of multiple of these. Plus, of course, the Kehrer Bielan team members, Ken, myself, and Tim. And then all of you in the audience. And the way we look at this is that we're going to start with some really good data, and that's a super start to this session. What makes it even better than that is this panel that we have, and their sharing of ideas and the discussion they bring. And the one thing that can really then bring it over the top is audience participation. So let's use the data. Let's benefit from the experience and the knowledge of this panel, and then let's have that interaction from all of you, virtually online. So with that, Ken, I'm going to turn it over to you to cover some research and to get the discussion started.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks.
As we often do for these meetings, we did a survey to provide some data and context for the discussion. And we'll kick it off with a little bit of data from that survey. We had 36 institutions to participate. And thank you for those of you who did. But only about 13 of them were able to give us data that we could use to create benchmarks for how call centers are being managed in banks and credit unions. That's less than we would like, but twice as many as we had when we did the survey last year. So as Peter said, we're making progress. But we'll come back to that point because we know that some of you on the call have data you can give us, and we're going to hound you until you do. The first thing we want to do with the data is to look at some benchmarks to answer the kind of questions that we're getting from all of you. And the first one is, how many accounts or clients should you expect a call center advisor to manage? And in the chart you're going to see in the next few minutes, we've arranged all of those 13 firms from the highest number to the lowest number and computed the average and the median. So from this data, it looks like the typical call center advisor would be able to handle between 1,300 and 3,900 customer accounts. Looked at in terms of the number of client households that they can handle, the typical advisor appears to handle a little over 600 to between 1,400. Another question we get is, how much should a call center advisor produce? Again, with the same kind of analysis, arraying the firms from highest to lowest, it looks like the typical advisor would be able to produce between $9,000 and $15,000 of revenue a month and manage between 50 and 100 million in assets. A major objective of having a call center is to reduce the costs of serving a client. So the question naturally is, well, what's the cost to serve in an investment call center in a bank or credit union? By this, we look at, since we don't really have visibility into the overhead and technology costs of the firm, we focus just on the cost of compensation, the compensation paid to advisors, sales assistants, the manager, whoever the staff are of the call center. And looking at that on a monthly basis, it appears that um, the average cost per account in a call center is between $7 and $37. Looked at in terms of per client household as opposed to per account, the typical client is served, it costs about $13 to $62 a client to serve them in a call center. Tim? How productive are the assets? You'd expect assets in a call center to be less productive than assets that are being served by a traditional across-the-desk advisor, because after all, it's sort of the less productive accounts that have been shunted in many cases to a call center. And that appears to be the case. The typical account generates between $7 and $17 a month in a call center. Looked at on a revenue per client basis, clients generate between $11 and $27 a month in revenue per client. We can't do much analysis with these kinds of data with only 13 observations, but we can look at a couple of things. Last year, one of the issues that we discussed from the little bit of data we had was to what extent does the maturity of a call center make a difference in terms of the cost per client? In other words, does a firm have to get some footing in terms of years before it actually can drive down the cost of client? And with a little more data, we now see that pretty much the age of the call center doesn't make much difference in terms of the cost per client. Looking at this chart, the vertical distance is the cost per client, ranging from $10 to just $65 per client. The horizontal axis is the age of clients, age of the call centers in years. And you can see that's pretty flat, except for that one outlier up in the upper right-hand corner. That's been in business 16 years and it's still about $65 in cost per client. The other thing we can look at is scale. There was a concern in our discussion last year that it's difficult for a small firm to be able to have low cost per clients in a call center. And you can see here that scale is definitely important. Again, the height of the balls is the cost per client, and moving from left to right is the number of call center advisors. And clearly, if you have a very few advisors, you have high cost per client. But it does appear that the break even, or the point at which cost per client declines, is only at 4 or 5 advisors in a call center, which is quite small, smaller than I would have expected. We can bring both of those ideas together in one chart and look at both the impact of size or scale of the call center versus the age of the call center in this chart, where the size of the balls is the number of advisors the firm has, and the placement of the balls on the chart is the age of the client, rather the age of the call center. And as you can see, this kind of explains that one outlier in the upper right-hand corner, that even though it's quite experienced as a call center, it has relatively small number of advisors. We'd like to do more analysis, but we really need more data. And we think that some of these, you've also noticed in some of these benchmarks that the range of the typical performance is pretty wide. And we'd like to be able to understand why some are higher or lower on that spectrum. And we suspect it has to do with the particular service model that the firm has. Is it just sort of inbound customer service? Is it designed to manage orphan accounts or manage accounts that have been, unproductive accounts that have been migrated from advisors? Is this triage from the bank's mass affluent strategy, where they've decided a certain kind of client should be served by a call center rather than by an in-person advisor? Is the model designed to support a digital advice model with some human interaction? Or is it designed to solve a difficult geography problem where it's very difficult to hire an advisor to work in Copiac, New York, for example, in upstate New York, or to support challenging branches like supermarkets and so on. So to do that, we need more data to be able to sort this out. And what we're going to be, coming at you and try to encourage you to provide that data. But in the meantime, what we can do is provide you some case studies of experience of different models. And we're going to do that today, starting right now. And I see that Brian's joined us. Brian, why don't you tell us about your model and how and the challenges that you've been facing?
Sure. So with BMO Wealth Direct, that's part of BMO Harris Financial Advisors. We're the mass market offering for the bank. We generally have kind of a rule that anything below 100,000 belongs in our world. And that's a looser rule up to 250. Managed money from 100 to 250 usually remains with an advisor that's sitting in branch. But we don't have any hard limits on anything over that. So if one of our advisors gets some business in the 700, 800 range, they can close that. The composition of the department it's split 50-50 between service staff that's just customer service and a sales staff. So we have junior advisors and we have full-blown financial advisors. And those financial advisors do have their own book of business, including the junior advisors. A lot of that's comprised of migrated accounts. All managed accounts have to be assigned to an advisor. So any managed stuff we get migrated to our team, we would assign it to one of those. And then we have a large house book of business that the financial advisors provide advice on through a call queue. But the service staff mainly manages those. They don't have a specific advisor assigned to them. What we do is our compensation is completely product agnostic. So to eliminate or to comply with best interest, an advisor invests $50,000 into an annuity, into a mutual fund, into a managed account, they get compensated the same amount for that. Doesn't matter what the bank gets paid on it. So very simple model we have, starting at 30 basis points up to 80 basis points. And they are salaried, the financial advisors. They get a base salary. They do not receive any kind of trail revenue. That all goes to the house, and that justifies paying for that salary, is kind of the support they provide for the house book of business. I'm trying to think what else I could tell you. Is there anything specific you were looking for me to dive into regarding our group?
Anyone in the panel want to ask?
Yeah, Brian, let me ask a question. So how has it changed this year versus last year where more clients aren't in branches and more accustomed to, working on the phone? Just give us a year over year dynamic there.
So we had our best year ever this year. We've been prepared for this. We work in a remote environment, basically, to our clients, working in an office. So the fact that my team had to go work from their homes, it wasn't any different to the client. So it was kind of, as soon as we got our technology working, everything else was very smooth for us. We actually were able to hire our first true remote advisor outside of our footprint. Basically, this was the test showing us this is possible. So we normally have people either based out of Brookfield, Wisconsin or Naperville, Illinois. And I just hired an advisor in Scottsdale, Arizona. So that was a real big breakthrough for us. We find the team collaboration is actually much better because we have a team chat going all day. So the advisors are asking each other questions. Maybe it be a rate question, or do you know what Western Southern's out at right now for their 3-year, stuff like that. Questions on opening an account, opposed to just turning to the person next to them and asking that question, and they might have an answer. The whole team contributes, so we get much quicker answers and much better. People stack on input to basically solve those problems. So this has been actually really great for us. Sales numbers were up significantly. The advisors said they're less distracted. The one downfall we had is printing and mailing. So I didn't want any advisor to take any physical documents in their home or have any. So I had to have one person in both my offices doing all the printing and mailing. They still go in every single day. So that takes away from their phone activity. And it's one of the customer service agents. So I would say with that little hiccup or little setback, otherwise things have been great for us in this environment. And it's shown that we can, definitely perform. And I plan to expand hiring more advisors in different locations. It's real nice to have that advisor in Arizona for maybe some West Coast coverage, time zone. I would like to get some additional advisors there and maybe expand our hours. But overall, really happy with the way we came out of this.
But your basic delivery model is to have advisors assigned a book of customers.
Correct. Each advisor has about 600 to 1,000 accounts. We started off small. When a new advisor starts, we just give them a small handful of managed accounts, maybe 50 or so, and some that may have potential. And then they kind of build their book from there. Each migration that we have from the field, we kind of have these advisors do outbound calling on them to see if there's opportunity. Most of these people haven't been talked to in years. They're neglected clients. And we find that we get a real good response from them. They're like, oh, someone's finally willing to talk to me. And lots of new business comes out of that. And if they connect with one of those clients from migration, they can send it to their manager and say, I'd like this to be my client moving forward. And we just move it into their rep code.
Mm-hmm. And is there, are migrated clients sort of the primary source of your client base?
A lot of the book has been built off migration, but the majority of our new business is being done on true new, not existing clients. The existing ones are more of maintaining. We get that first rush after a migration to see if you can kind of bring any on, and then you do a little bit of new business there. But for the most part, our monthly new business is true new business.
So referred from the branches, is that the?
Yes.
Okay.
We've been starting to partner with some bankers out in the branches, just like an advisor would that's sitting in there with them. We exited a couple regions for having physical advisors sitting in branches, and our advisors have partnered with the branch bankers, and they do joint meetings the exact same way as a branch advisor would do. So we have the exact same product set that a field advisor would have. We just don't sit in the physical branch, and their compensation structure is different. It's not revenue based, it's asset based. That's really the only main difference between us and the advisors that are sitting out there face to face. And we have been utilizing Microsoft Teams for meetings. That was something we never did before this started to get that face-to-face interaction with clients. Risk and everyone kind of threw their hands up at the beginning of this. It says, let's do what we need to do. So we were able to implement that. And so we do have the face-to-face meetings just like this over a video.
And Brian, we've had the same question come in for you from a couple of folks over the chat, which is, I guess, does the face-to-face interaction, does that include the ability for the advisor to screen share?
Yes, it does. We can share a specific document or a specific system. So yeah, absolutely. Usually when we go over the financial plans, we screen share them. We do not deliver it to them because we find they get distracted if we're not the ones kind of driving it.
Well, good. We'll come back to you in a few minutes, Brian, but let's turn to Tom Dowd and tell us about your operation, which is a little different than Brian's.
Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate the opportunity. I lead our efforts in our retirement services group as our primary job. So those are folks who have a 401k plan or a defined benefit plan. And the light shining bright, offering remote advice. At Key Mutual Group, we've been doing it for 20 years. So it's not new. COVID came in, as everyone well knows, referrals are down over 50% and no one's coming into the branches anymore. So Peter Bielan and I have been working, gosh, really, Peter, for 6 months, putting together a really thoughtful strategy as to how we can go on offense and support credit union members with a strategy. So Ken, you hit the nail right on the head. Our first strategy, CBSI for CUNA, we're in 285 programs. We have over 6,000 relationships nationwide. So we're going to take it in 4 stage gates. And we're going to go with the pure definition of remote. So we're going to start with existing customers with geographic challenges. That's just going to be stage 1, right? So everyone has those programs. So I'll be really curious over time. I don't think anyone has this model built out yet, but we're going to start with a 20-mile radius. If you live outside of a 20-mile radius, we're going to connect the pipes and bring that into a centralized location. If you're 20 miles in, that's going to be going into your face-to-face team. So we have oodles of credit union leadership that are really excited to have this incremental opportunity, from an advisor perspective and a revenue perspective, to really help serve these members, in a really methodical, fashionable way. So it's really not a call center delivery method, if you will. It's really pure remote advice, and it's something that Peter and I have been really socializing and really excited to push this boat off the dock January 1.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of remote branches and so on, I think Navy has a few. Kevin, could you tell us about your model?
Sure. Our model has morphed over the years. I think when we first developed our contact center, our call center, we basically designed it so that it was for members who, because of their military status, they travel so much, they were better served by somebody that was remote. Everything was remote. So it wasn't necessarily designed as a call center for some of those other characteristics that you described, the abandoned accounts or the smaller accounts. It was really just a way that we could service members who they were best served over the telephone, over the computer, whatever the case may be. And because of the success we've had over the years, we've actually had to change and adjust models. Some of the things already mentioned, teams, not teams, but individual producers, and then abandoned accounts, house accounts. So now we've actually separated where we have that original model of individual advisors with their books of business because members prefer to do business over the phone. Now we are continuing to focus on better serving the members. So we do have a support group that their entire responsibility is basically to service those members who may not have had a call in 3 or 4 years. So, starting with accounts less than $50,000, they're being supported by our contact center, which is a true group of people, a team effort, and the members have the ability to call it, hours that are greater than if they had a face-to-face advisor, because we expand the hours, I think, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. East Coast time. So a 12-hour service availability for all those members, where from a prior model, they'd only have the advisor for a certain period of time. The advisor goes on vacation. It's hard to get a hold of somebody. So, the success of our organization has allowed us to take a deep dive into the different business models, and we continue to try and evolve that model because what's working today may not be working tomorrow. What we did see is those during the pandemic, I guess we're still in the pandemic, but what we saw is the advisors that have always been comfortable with working over the phone or through the web, they didn't skip a beat. They were very familiar with the technology, very familiar with outbound, inbound calls, whatever it may be of how members like to work remotely. Our face-to-face advisors struggled a little bit because that's not their normal way that they interact with our membership. So we had part of our group, I think it's about 5 or 6 advisors that make up the individual book of business in the location in Pensacola. They didn't miss a beat. And then the other 5 or 6 that are supporting a group, a team of, or I'm sorry, the members that have less than, X amount of dollars in assets, all that stuff ran smoothly, and they actually were best practices for field advisors. We had many best practice sessions, and we were able to learn from each other. And somebody mentioned, having remote advisors cover different territories. Those are used too. We have branches all over the country, like you said, Ken, and trying to service a branch that's in, Kansas City. We have one branch that's outside of an Army base, I think, out in Kansas City. It's difficult to have one person service one branch. So those type of branches are served by the individual producers in the call center. So we try and segregate it, but it's an ever evolving model. And I don't know from the pandemic what will eventually change, but we're always looking at ways to improve that model.
How are your advisors compensated?
The ones that are in the servicing the members that have less than, let's say, $50,000 in assets, those are salary-based advisors with a corporate incentive. And then the advisors that have their own book of business are essentially compensated the same way the field advisors are compensated. Your own book of business, your own product solution. So there's really no differentiation there, except for the way that they get new clients. They have the luxury, I guess, of getting referrals from the credit union's contact center. So we'll have a member that might call in through the 800 toll-free number for the credit union, and that is eventually wired to somebody that's an individual producer in the call center. So they'll get some inbound calls, whereas face-to-face advisor, those are rare, and we get those through branch referrals. So because their jobs are similar in nature, their compensation is similar.
Mm-hmm.
So Ken, a couple of kind of themes in the questions that are coming in over chat. One is around segmentation. I think Kevin and Tom have spoken to kind of geographic segmentation or ways to service members who aren't necessarily within an advisor's footprint. There's some interest in whether or not anyone is taking a dollars and cents based segmentation strategy. Clients with less than so much to invest go to the call center, for example. And then again, around the theme of clients that have been migrated from an advisor, whether the advisor that gives up the account receives any compensation as a result.
Tim, I wouldn't mind taking a crack at the second one first. My prior tenure at SunTrust, I was fortunate enough to, spend 15 years building their retail platform. And I was on the road for a good amount of time, coaching, educating, motivating. Then I built the call center, and we migrated 50,000 accounts and close to $2 billion of AUM So I'd like to save the team a little bit of frustration and heartache. We did joint rep numbers for 24 months, and it was an absolute disaster, right? It was the what if Mr. Jones sold their house or won the lottery. And I did all this work to do joint rep numbers for 24 months. And it was just, the ROI wasn't there. So my recommendation is if you're socializing and contemplating it, it's a client first approach. Just let the account go, bring it to the remote team, and have a client first approach. If she or he wants to go back to the geography, let it go. But the whole concept of revenue share, the ROI is not there. And in my opinion, just through my lens, leadership has to make a decision and stick with it.
Any other?
I can.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ken. I was going to say, so we took an approach at Huntington where, it's I think worked really nicely. So essentially, what we do, so we have 11 regions within HFA, and we've been doing migrations here over the past, at this point, about 12 months. So, I mean, essentially what we're looking at is our households. We use our data team to pull households within HFA that have under $25,000 in investments with the investment company. Okay. So once we pull those lists, what we'll do is we'll allow the financial advisors to review those lists just to make sure we didn't miss anything. You know, maybe it's part of a larger household and we didn't catch it. Maybe it's a client that they're currently working with and, you know, they are bringing in maybe a larger rollover, for example. So they have an opportunity. We give them generally about 2 weeks to review those accounts that would ultimately migrate to our National Advice Center. And then once the accounts migrate, any revenue that would be coming in for those accounts would ultimately come to the National Advice Center. And we essentially own that account from the standpoint of future sales and future service as well. And I think that that's the big piece here that we also need to focus in on. I mean, certainly at Huntington, what we're looking at is really allowing the branch advisors to focus more upstream. We want to allow them to focus more on the mass affluent clients, which we've defined as over $100,000 in investable assets. And when we do pare their books down by moving these households to the National Advice Center that are, essentially 25,000 and under based on current assets with the firm, they're finding that they do have that opportunity. They have that opportunity to spend more time working their book of business, spend more time with financial planning conversations. So, I would say for us, we haven't frankly seen a great deal of pushback from our advisors in the field. But I think too, and again, this is important to note. I would say that having a very good relationship with the regional sales managers that are in those different geographies is very valuable. So, not only can we articulate the why behind it to the leadership team, but then ultimately that leadership team can articulate the why to the advisors and show them the very positive impact that this type of activity can have on their overall book.
So there's no pushback from advisors. What about pushback from the clients? To being told now you're being dealt with by someone over the phone rather than someone with a nice desk.
Yeah, Ken, a good question. And, periodically, and I would say very infrequently, we're receiving that type of pushback from the client. Frankly, and I think somebody else in the panel, maybe Brian referenced it as well. These clients haven't talked with an advisor in years.
Yeah.
So, in terms of what their experience has been, it's been essentially nothing. So, now we are giving them, I think, a very good option. Not only are we proactively calling these clients as well, but if they do go into, maybe their local branch, they do have a need that branch colleague, our partners in the field can see through our internal systems that the household is assigned to the advice center. They pick up the phone, they call, and they can be connected with an advisor very quickly and get that need taken care of. And by the way, that also opens up the door for the advisor to also have a conversation with that client in an effort to find some additional opportunities as well, because, you know, again, they probably haven't talked with somebody in a good deal of time.
Hey, Ken, I can also echo, you know, revenue share there, and maybe there's none of that revenue share. As a matter of fact, we probably get positive emails from the financial advisors who now are able to better service a smaller book of business. You know, that's why they got into the business. They love the relationship. They love the financial planning, and trying to do it with a lot more people than they have control over is really difficult. So really, there's no expectation on the part of the advisor to get any part of that revenue, because they're able to increase their revenue, their new assets, based upon better serving a geography or an existing book of business. So, but we do believe that it's a better service model for the client, the member, because they are able to get better service 12 hours a day versus 8 hours a day. So, you know, it's a necessity for both the advisor and the member, we believe. It's not, yeah, it's a good business decision, but I think it's a win-win situation.
Right.
Yeah, Colin, I think you.
Ken, I think Adam might have a slightly different perspective on that question.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, thanks everybody. I really appreciate that, and I actually got my mind working here because one of our biggest enterprise clients is a national financial services firm, 4,000 advisors and reps around the country. They were asking this question about 4 years ago because they really knew that the remote advice and having a remote call center that had the ability to deliver advice, like Thomas mentioned, was really going to be critical. And one of the things that they realized is that 50% of their new revenue generated for the year came from 3% of their existing client base, which means that they were classically not, you know, they were getting so much new revenue from loyal clients that they really weren't delving into cross-selling and, you know, obviously uncovering more opportunities. So they built a call center of 25 people up in Syracuse, got them licensed, made them reps, and actually had them lead with advice level reach out. So they actually use Asset Map to kind of do very high level light financial planning and re-engage those clients, and also handle the hundreds of thousands of what we call orphans, basically people who were sold by an original selling advisor and then left the business or left the company and then got reassigned to a national account. But nobody was calling upon them, right? The local regional organizations weren't setting aside time to take care of these orphans that were C and D level clients. And so one of the things that they had to address was a couple that I'll throw out there for everybody to address. Which one was, if we're going to lead with advice, how do we get over the fact that there are maybe original selling agents that are not, or advisors that are not, that are going to want to participate, right? They're going to want to get compensation. And so as I wrote in the chat, the way they dealt with it is they said, well, if the service center sells new business, we'll throw 25% back of that to the original sales agent as a gift. But if they did offer, which is a unique thing, I'd love to hear what people think, they actually offered the original advisor to get back involved now that they had engaged their client. They got them on the hook. And as a result, they found when they gave them back the client, the advisor was required to give back 25% to the call center for them doing their effort. But what happened is that the original advisor would actually cross-sell and magnify the case significantly and would actually bring in significantly more assets. So I'm curious whether anybody had any experience with that. That's or an antithesis of actually not splitting up compensation. Maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, once we do have those migrated accounts at the National Advice Center with Huntington, I mean, that's essentially now where that client is going to be working. So I mean, if we are, you know, again, making proactive phone calls, if we're talking with a client that calls in with a need and we uncover a new opportunity, I would say that, you know, the advisor at the Advice Center is really going to be the one leading that relationship going forward, regardless of size. So yeah, so we don't necessarily have I guess, conversation with the client that they could potentially work with their former advisor if they would prefer that. Once it's aligned with us and our team, we're going to move forward with that relationship. Now, I would say if the client, proactively says, hey, I really would prefer to have that across the desk interaction, then we will, certainly work with the advisors in the field and the management team to make that happen for them. But frankly, again, I think we've done a good job training our branch partners as well. So they're not necessarily delivering that conversation like it's going to be a lesser experience working with somebody over the phone as opposed to face to face. And I think that's a big part of this for us is we don't want it to be something where it's like, hey, you don't really have enough money to see somebody in person, so we're gonna, shift you over to the call center. They're having a very engaging dialogue. They're having a very enthusiastic conversation about, again, just frankly getting help, right? So this is something that I say a lot with our partners is it's only weird if you make it weird, right? If they make it just, hey, this is going to be fantastic. You're going to have a great experience working with our National Advice Center. Let's get somebody on the phone right now to have that conversation. The client's like, hey, someone's going to help me. This is fantastic. Versus, sorry, you don't have enough in investable, so we're going to send you over here. So I think that that's a big part of it too. Is what does that conversation sound like with the client? How are our branch partners, our branch colleagues presenting that? And I think that conversation goes a very long way to ensure the client feels really good about the experience they're going to have.
Hey, Colin, this is Kelly Zanstra, and I couldn't agree more with the sentiments that you shared there. And we definitely, with the Ameriprise Advisor Center, and it is the client experience that you present the client. And we really believe that the Advisor Center model and the branch model deliver the same client experience, just in different ways. And we would challenge to think that, we can give our clients the opportunity to choose based upon their preference where they want to work. We have consistent client experience, like I said, in the branch and in our advisor center. And if we approach and we collect and we embrace these client relationships in both channels and allow our clients then to make a decision around how they want to be served, that is the model that we're going after in terms of thinking about client segmentation.
Sure. Yeah. And Brian mentioned this too. It's when we think about the menu, right, of offerings, it's identical. So,
Yep.
it's not a watered down menu. We have the same financial planning capabilities, same, insurance platform, managed money. Everything is exactly the same. So, again, it's not going to necessarily be a lesser experience in that regard. And I know, we started the meeting talking about some, certain challenges with COVID this year. And I would say that, that's even, I think, helped our partners embrace our model even more, because the clients don't need to come into a branch. They don't need to, set up a meeting and, maybe get in their car and go out in public if they don't want to do that. They have the ability to talk with an advisor over the phone. So, but that to me has been big. And the other thing too, for us, and it's ironic. I was on a call this morning rolling out our referral segmentation model to 2 regions up in Michigan earlier today. And we had one of our branch colleagues who we've been working with here for just about 2 or 3 months. And, she had some incredible praise for the advisor that she's working with on a dedicated basis. And part of what she said is, I don't need to wait for an advisor to be available. Maybe I would only see my advisor once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on scheduling. Now, because my advisor is centralized, he's not driving around. Right? He doesn't have that windshield time. So if the client has availability at 11 o'clock on Wednesday, I know that my advisor will be available to be there for the client and take that meeting because they're not running, another meeting across town at 10 or 10:30 and they wouldn't be able to get over here. So I think that, a lot of what we talk about too And Kelly, touching on what you were saying, is the ease of use and convenience of working with, an advisor that's in a centralized location.
And the amount of digital capabilities that we can leverage now, given the environment that we're in terms of the innovation around digital financial planning and integrating a digital financial planning experience
Right.
alongside access to advisors. It's that key combination of the two that allows a really deep and robust conversation to happen virtually more so than it did, years ago.
Right.
I think just that innovation and technology has allowed these models to really innovate and develop and really deliver, sometimes I believe, even a better client experience, right? Because we can leverage the information and the data that we learn digitally about our clients and then serve up information and content and relevant information to help them, and personalize the relationship and key into their goals and give them additional information that help them really move their goals forward and achieve their successes. So I think, our environment is just really developed in this area and allowed us to deliver on an exceptionally good, excellent client experience digitally and through these remote advisor capabilities.
Yep, agreed.
One of the things that can you hear me? One of the things that we had to address, at least in that large of a size of a call center, at least advice-led call center, which I totally agree with both of you. I mean, the reality is that I know, even as a recovering financial planner myself, having done 70% of our meetings remotely for the high net worth clients, it's very well established that you can do it. One of the challenges, of course, because you do tend to have high turnover in call centers, is that there is not necessarily the same kind of human connection, the same person that's connecting. And so one of the challenges we see that all of us are going to have to address, I know we've been working on it at Asset Map, is how do you collaborate instantly? So if somebody does call into an advice center, that representative can literally bring up their entire life and all the planning that's been done in instance, and then literally hand that off to the next person if they can't be accessible, or as they don't make it in the business, let's say. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges. Collaboration, we think, is really the next bastion of how we need to establish financial planning and advice, so it's transferable between advisors and reps. I'm curious if anybody's working on that as well.
Yeah, we've done a lot in that space, Adam. We last year rolled out a digital financial planning and advice capability that allows our clients to go in and on their own or with the assistance of an advisor, either way, whichever they prefer, they can go in and create goals, and they can establish a base plan, uncover gaps potentially that they have within their financial plan. And that is all stored on our client site. So that information that client has shared with us is then very transferable to advisors on their team that work directly with them to dispense the advice and that human connection that people are really looking for, especially as life changes so much these days, to get that second opinion, to really work alongside them. But that information that you collect, and we also utilize Salesforce and other CRM capabilities to a great degree in order to collect and ensure that we capture everything about our clients so that the conversations are seamless as we have our teams of advisors working with clients, delivering on that client experience.
Adam, I wouldn't mind asking this question since we're on the topic. One of the biggest hurdles when it comes to financial planning, right, is try to eliminate all hurdles from an advisor. Are we close to data integration in terms of financial planning to remove that hurdle?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I know our platform has something like 13 integration partners, but the funny thing is that, to say we do integration doesn't mean that all the right data moves, right? It usually, unfortunately, there's a lot of comments about, oh, we have single sign-on, we're integrated. But I don't, it's a really good question, because in the front end planning, my experience has been, if you're engaging somebody for planning for the first time, they're not always as comfortable. I mean, data has shown that they're not always comfortable fully aggregating all their other accounts and all their other stuff and passwords to get that information up front for a good portion of the population. So it does require usually a human or a digital form to collect data and profile as best you can about what's going on in their life before you give them contextual advice. Once that happens, they're near existing a client. That's when I think the data integration comes into play. Clearly, planning and CRM is critical. And if we do have accounts, then clearly accounts we manage and financial planning and CRM should be integrated. Those should be I think the table stakes for almost all institutions. At least I have what I manage up to date. Stuff that's held away or off balance sheet is more going to be incumbent upon the client to keep up to date. But even we were seeing some of the biggest players in the space, financial planning, only have anywhere from 4 to 20% adoption on their aggregation engines, just because those passwords break. And if you're familiar with data aggregation, it's a great idea, but execution is really challenging at scale.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just as challenging as one broker dealer, just the assets held at our institution, loading it into the financial plan to remove that hurdle for the advisor to engage in a conversation with the client. And now we have tools that we can push that out to the client and say, hey, listen, Mrs. Jones, you tinker around with it. I'll get an alert that says you tinkered around with it. And let's have that conversation versus the old PDF worksheet. So, you know, financial planning's come a long ways the last several years, and we're getting better, but we got to continue to remove that hurdle where Mr. and Mrs. Advisor does not want to key in that data, you know, as it's held internally in our own walls. It's a big challenge. Yeah.
Well, back to segmentation. Another aspect of segmentation is segmenting your call center staff to serve different needs. And Colin, I think you do that, right?
You know, we are, yes, and we're actually adding to that a little bit. So we do have today essentially two different teams in terms of, you know, day-to-day activity. So we do have one group of advisors that is assigned to a dedicated circuit of branches. Okay, so in this particular case, we have, it's about 16 offices per advisor on that dedicated team. So, and if somebody mentioned in-stores earlier, and I would say right now about 2/3 of those branches that we do support are in-store locations. The other third would be, you know, traditional offices. So, you know, that team again is really aligned to those branches. Every case, every you know, new referral opportunity would route through their dedicated NAC financial advisor. We also have another team that is, you know, primarily working on our 877 phone number. So they have a split schedule. So day to day, they'll be taking incoming calls from clients and partners half of the day. And then the other half of the day, they're going to be making outbound phone calls to the book of business that we've been migrating to, you know, again, introduce and then, you know, certainly look at opportunities to put time on the calendar for review appointments and, you know, ultimately, hopefully find more business opportunities. What we're adding next year, and, you know, couldn't be more thrilled about this because I did see a question in the chat, I believe, about capacity. So, you know, capacity for the team on the 877 number has been at times this year very challenged. So not only next year are we going to be adding additional advisors to that group, we're also going to be adding a couple of agents that are going to be strictly working in a client services capacity for the National Advice Center team, which should really allow the advisors to spend more time, one, you know, working with clients and partners that are calling into the 877 phone number with, you know, business and referral opportunities, but it's also going to allow them to spend more time on a day-to-day basis as well, running appointments and making outbound phone calls. So, you know, we're essentially, again, this is something that's going to be new for us in 2021, but really identified it this year as a true need, because again, we have migrated a lot of accounts. I mean, at this stage, you know, we've migrated close to 56,000 accounts to our National Advice Center. And a lot of those, you know, clients obviously are going to need service on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, having those agents specifically aligned to the service component of the group, I think is going to allow us much more time, much more capacity to spend time having, you know, advisory conversations with clients on a day-to-day basis, which is going to be huge for us. And then, you know, the the dedicated team of advisors, like I mentioned, I mean, they're really responsible for their own book of business. We've aligned the offices that they support on a dedicated basis. We've really rolled up the book of business from those offices to those advisors specifically. So there's not any real confusion, right? If a client walks in and they have an investment relationship, I need to call, Brandon. And so then that way, we have an opportunity to, one, connect those clients within that office to the dedicated advisor. But then it also allows us, I think a great opportunity from a deepening perspective as well with those households also, to align those dedicated advisors to that branch specifically.
I'm going to share an idea with you before I forget it. This is really cool, Colin, because the model that I started sharing with you with this financial advisory organization has had so much success with their advice-led call center that they actually enable now financial advisors to send a segment of their book back to the call center with a cost sharing situation where the advisors can send on groups of 100, $10 per advisor, commit, in other words, to pay $1,000 to have 100 clients get taken care of through the call center. And if there's any business, they agree to share it 50-50, just off the bat. And what it's done is it's enabled the financial professional who's not mindful of wanting to learn this newer process or offload, we'll call it unperforming books of business, or idle clients. And it's actually generated a significant amount of new AUM for this group. And lifted all boats. So I think what it starts to show is that having a remote deliver advice call center, as we're calling it, or however we're going to call it, is clearly an integral part of the future of advice delivery, entirely remote. Not the least of this was going to happen whether we had a pandemic accelerator or not.
Sure.
And I think we're going to continue to see more investments here that actually serve other parts of the business that need the resource and support to execute this.
Yeah, and that's very interesting as well, because now, look, I was an advisor for a number of years. I wanted as many clients in my book of business as I could possibly have. I mean, now that I'm a little bit older and wiser, I understand that's not necessarily the best way to do business, especially because of all the data we get from Kehrer Bielan here. But I would also say that when I think about that type of an approach, it would probably open up the purse strings a little bit from the advisors to say, what, maybe I really don't need these 60 clients that I was just hanging on to as a maybe just in case type scenario.
Yeah.
And now I can. What's that?
Oh, I was going to say, why they hold on to them, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
They're going to win the lottery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, who knows? Maybe they'll retire here, and I can get that roller I've been talking about for the past 15 years. Yeah, but I mean, no, that's a great point. I mean, I think that would allow for again, maybe a little bit more of a mindful approach to have the advisors think differently about sending additional households to a centralized group, as opposed to wanting it kind of get their arms around the whole thing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially
I think also depending upon your technology stack, it may be challenging to share revenue and create different rep codes and with insurance carriers and fund companies directly and brokerage. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of things. So in our perspective, technology challenges make us a little bit apprehensive of making some wholesale changes, because then you have to flow into the revenue. Where's the revenue? How do you track the revenue? And
sure,
with the challenges there too. So we're trying to keep it as simple as possible with big picture business models. Mm-hmm. Individual advisor book of business over the phone, or that support group that supports the major book of business. And it's worked well for us.
Well, Kelly, you've mentioned your advice center a couple of times. Can you give us an overview of your operation?
I would love to. Do you mind? Can I share a couple screens with the group?
Sure.
Okay. All right. You can let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, we see it.
Perfect. So this has been a great conversation. I think a lot of the things that we've been talking about are sort of highlighted in a few slides that I have that I want to thank you for the opportunity and sharing. The Ameriprise Advisor Center has been this remote advice capability we've had in place for a number of years. We're just starting to roll this out to our financial institution as partners. And again, the Ameriprise Advisor Center is this centralized advisor team capability that's focused on delivering financial advice. We offer a unique digital financial planning experience, and I think I saw a note in the chat. Our financial planning digital experience is actually unique to the Advisor Center and Ameriprise, and it's supported by a team of about 150, it's probably bigger than that now, but 150 and growing experienced financial advisors that can really scale and provide access to wealth management solutions for a large number of clients. And I think, you know, some of the sentiments today around call centers and these are remote advice capabilities, being able to leverage these in order to overcome some of these challenges that we've been talking about, specifically around the reduction in branch traffic, trying to engage your full depositor base and all the different generational needs of wealth management, and of course the segmentation discussion that we all love to have. Again, you know, in the Advisor Center, what we strive to do is really create an excellent client service experience, and so really giving our clients choice. I mean, there's definitely some clients that want to be served face to face, and absolutely we migrate them to the advisor branches. But we also want to keep our relationships intact. And if they're working well in the Advisor Center, we want to continue to nurture and develop those relationships, but give them choice in how they want to work with their with their wealth management providers. So within the Advisor Center, we really are focused on executing sort of three, I think, critical capabilities we think are important in these remote advice centers. And one is providing that access to experienced advisors. So we are just seeing more than ever, clients are really seeking advice in dealing with the many changes that are going on in their life, and having the ability to connect our clients directly with other humans to have conversations and interactions when it's right for them is an important piece of this. And the Advisor Center offers that efficient way to connect large numbers of clients to advisors at scale. And then the other piece is that digital financial planning experience. It's enabling clients to really see and visualize their financial planning experience, and also helping advisors collect that information to really develop out that financial plan. And then the final piece is really that integrated operating environment. I think that gets at some of the questions around sharing compensation and that sort of thing. We're very focused on execution, and we really create sort of this ecosystem around the operations to ensure that we are delivering on the best, most consistent, predictable client experience that we can, by putting in place, you know, leadership and operations and really disciplined execution around our client experience to ensure that we are delivering on what our clients expect. So those are, to me, like the key things to focus in on some of these on a model that's delivering remote advice capabilities. The way we are structured, this is just going a little deeper into the access to advisors. We are organized in teams of advisors who have different roles in managing the client experience. Our clients are assigned to a team of 10 to 12 advisors, which is a really great number of advisors for a team manager to lead, because that leadership and that development piece is so important. So these 10 to 12 advisors, they provide a personal yet scalable experience. We're organized by program or geography, And we have a number of different roles that we leverage in delivering our client experience. You can see here we have within the advisor team, we have a couple different roles. All are licensed advisors. And some of our advisors are just more focused on the client service aspect of the client relationship, and other advisors are focused on the holding those advice strategy meetings and really solving for the financial plan within some of these meetings. And then we also have a solution specialist. And this is a team that sits outside of the advisor team that our advisors can have clients work with if they have unique, more complex needs that they need to work through. And off here to the left is our client support associates in training. So thinking through, how we bring in new advisors, we have advisors start out, go through training, get licensed, start in that role. Typically, the career path through our advisor center is to start here and then support the client's servicing relationships and move into a client relationship manager with opportunities to move into a solution specialist and opportunities to become a team leader as well. So we really have spent a lot of time developing out a robust career development process for our advisors as well, and allowing them many different experiences. All of our advisors are salaried and bonused and offer, that full suite of wealth management solutions. So that's a little bit about our teams, and this is really something we introduced somewhat recently, is this digital financial planning experience, which has been really well received. All of our clients have access to this compelling sort of goal-based financial planning experience. Again, clients can go in on their own, or they can work with an advisor to go through the experience. We really, it's a very, it's an experience where we begin by really seeking to understand what's important to our clients. So really engaging them empathetically and leading them to self-discover their goals. And then our experience provides feedback on whether or not clients are on track to achieving goals, and highlights any gaps they have and opportunities to reach out to advisors to get some advice in closing those gaps. And then this is just an example of how some of these assets can come together to serve, that broad base of clients that we're seeking to serve. This is just a sample of what this could look like on a website, introducing a financial institution wealth management program, highlighting the teams of advisors that we have in place, and then also linking, to the branch-based advisors, again, providing clients choice, but also allowing clients to go in and experience the digital financial planning tool on their own if they would like to do that. And then, as you can see, reaching out into our teams, scheduling meetings, etc., as they want to engage with advice. So that's just a sample. And this is just a sample of some of the data and technology we use to really focus on delivering that consistent, predictable experience. I think I heard somebody else mention, daily, weekly huddles to really focus advisor teams on different aspects of that client experience. So we think that's really the glue that really keeps the model very rich, ensuring we're delivering on that that consistent, predictable experience, and really managing to a client experience. We recognize advisors for their client service feedback quite regularly, and as part of their incentive programs. And just finally, just speaking to the sort of omni-channel approach that we're seeking to develop and execute on, leveraging, teams of advisors to point consumers to, while at the same time leveraging the data and the information clients are giving us around their goals to help them with achieving those goals by pushing out content and information that's applicable to their goals, and really developing out that omni-channel approach to serving our clients. So thanks for the opportunity to share kind of what the model is that we've developed at Ameriprise, and how we're focused on delivering through this capability to really address some of those key challenges we see facing financial institutions, and how to really grow and expand those wealth management offerings through this call center approach.
Does a client that goes to a branch have a similar client experience as they would in the call center?
Yes, we execute on the same overall client experience within a branch than we do in the call center. I will say, I would, of course, say that, you know, we have a lot of operational process in place to ensure and check in and make sure that different elements of our client experience are happening as we would expect them to happen. So I'm probably biased in how we execute against it, but yes, overall it's the same experience.
Hey, Kelly, one quick question that came in for you over chat during your presentation. How many clients are serviced by the Ameriprise call center today?
Yeah, we have a large book of clients through the call center. Today, we've really developed that book of clients over the years through a number of the same mechanisms that I've heard discussed here, through advisors turning them into the call center, through relationships and advice that we provide through referrals, etc. Each of our teams has probably between 20 and 40,000 clients that they serve, depending on the depth of relationship that their client book has. As you can imagine, the financial advice relationships and the service model that we have of following up with our clients at least 4 times a year if they're in a financial planning relationship, you know, they can serve less clients than books that have maybe less deeper relationships. But yeah, between 20 and 40,000 within each one of our teams.
I think I don't think anyone has mentioned using remote advisors to support a robo advice platform, and I think a couple of you do that, if I'm not mistaken.
Can we do that? We have part of the group that handles the book of business as a team. Part of their responsibility is to handle the digital chat of our digital product. So that's part of their responsibility. It's occasionally they'll get a phone call, which means that the member had to go through a lot of different channels to get that phone number and finally arrive at the call center. But they do, one of their responsibilities is handle that live chat from our digital offering.
And then Colin, do you also support the digital channel?
To a degree. So our offering right now, so we do have some different offerings to clients based on their banking relationship. So we do have for example, 100 free trades, for instance, if the client qualifies through their deposit relationship, or I should say overall relationship with the bank. So we do support that aspect, because I mean, we do open up a lot of those accounts for our partners in the branches for some of the relationship pricing and things along those lines. So we support it. And then I would also say too that we are often answering, I would say, a lot of questions of clients. So if they do have maybe an issue with trading, for example, and things along those lines, we would help walk them through that. I do believe, and this is something that I've been talking about with my manager, is really expanding a group that's going to be specific to that sort of a client call that could be coming in on a day-to-day basis, because I do see that continuing to expand. We are looking to make our online and digital offer to our clients more intriguing. So I think that as we do that, and as we have more, I guess, I don't want to say better necessarily, but a different trading platform for maybe self-directed clients that are looking for a different digital experience, that we will provide more individuals on our team, more advisors that can help with those types of inquiries and things from clients. And I think too, I mean, it also I think presents an opportunity to expand the relationship as well. So if they're calling us with maybe questions about their self-directed account, right? What can we do as a firm to help with some of the dollars that are being managed elsewhere? So that's something as well that I think could be a big plus for us. If we are helping them with that money that they are looking at as their self-directed funds, what can we provide in terms of offering a solution for some of the dollars as well that are being managed elsewhere? So I mean, right now our capacity, I would say, Ken, is more support based, but I would say that yes, I mean we're frequently getting phone calls for clients that are looking at our digital platform currently.
Mm-hmm. How are we doing on other questions coming in, Tim?
I think we've been keeping up with the group. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think I see here one from Richard Federer from Fort Lee, New Jersey. He says, looking back at the data you presented, it looks like the average cost to serve is greater than the average revenue per client. Is anybody making money in their call centers? Well, I can't speak for the panel, but in terms of the 13 firms we had in the survey, 6 of them had revenue greater than that they were paying their advisors and call center staff, and 6 of them had cost to serve greater than the revenue they were bringing in, and 1 was breaking even. But I think his breaking even strategy was purposeful. I don't know if Tom Mitchell has clicked in. Tom, if you're available, you can raise your hand. You can tell us about your deliberate strategy to just break even with your call center advisor.
And while we wait for that, I guess the hard part to track of that is what it really does to the advisors in the field. Were you making money on that client before? Were you optimizing your revenue from that client before? If they migrated over to the call center, I would say you probably were not optimizing the revenue. Client satisfaction level. If you were to measure the client satisfaction level of these clients that were in the field, ignored by an advisor for years, and now in a call center, part of a team, part of somebody that's reaching out, that has periodic contacts, what's the value of that? And it's hard to put that in the financial statement, but it does speak to the overall delivery and reputation of the firm, the quality of the advice that you provide, and additional referrals and additional business that in many cases that client might have been lost from the organization. So maybe that model, we're so tied to income statements and to margin, in this business and all, and it's very difficult, I think, to measure the true value of these areas when we're trying to do it only numerically, and there's other components that really speak to it.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Peter, those are great points, and it's the other piece too that I often talk about with our different partners throughout the organization is the additional capacity, right, that the in-branch advisors now have to focus more upstream, right, and then like you mentioned, the cost to serve piece as well. And so, one thing that our finance partners have been reviewing for us is, what do things look like, regarding maybe average ticket sizes, for example, with our branch financial advisors. What are we looking at in terms of additional capacity for financial planning, right? Like looking at planning numbers year over year, because now again, the advisors have more time to spend with their book of business, the more mass affluent clients that they have in their book of business. And, it really allows them to I think, spend more time with the partners that they work with on a day-to-day basis to really help them uncover more of those mass affluent type opportunities. So I think you're 100% spot on there. We can't necessarily pinpoint with an advisor in the field to say, hey, I was able to close this, $400,000 managed case today because I didn't have these, 80 additional accounts in my book. But you know that it's happening because they are spending more time, with those larger wallet share opportunities. So I think that's a really valid point as well. Is what collectively as a firm is happening because of the additional capacity the advisors do have.
Agreed.
So Ken, Tom has been able to join us.
Great. Hi, Tom.
Oh, hi, how you doing, Ken and Tim?
Good.
The data that I provided you, Ken, was really talking about our program. Our program is, we're a small credit union, and I recognize there's capacity challenges. And when you have such large, I'll call it larger books with some individual advisors, the best way to weed those away is to kind of pare them back. And that's where we decided to centralize and then go digital with some of the smaller accounts. So my goal and my design was, can I make this work at least at a break-even point on the economics? When I say break-even, I'm talking true cash flow. The cost of the cost of that centralized advisor with his salary, benefits, and a little bonus, and a few other perks. I'm paying for his CFP training, a few things like that. So I want him to continue to grow and develop. But the fact was, could that alleviate the pressures that a lot of our advisors have in handling and servicing the smaller clients, right? We all talk about it. How do we manage through that? And candidly, those smaller and older clients haven't been touched anyhow. So it's been a very, very profitable, when I say profitable, well above break even, but I hit my break even point in a year, which was great. And now we're into the second year now, and we're looking at expanding next year in 2021, some more marketing out to approach the millennials and the digital approach, because our broker dealer has a digital solution for us that we've embraced, and we're ramping that up now. So that was my strategy, and I'm happy with it. And it's obviously it won't maybe work in some programs, but the most important thing is we wanted to get rid of the ankle biters, as I call them, the ankle biters of service on the smaller accounts. And how can we then provide that buoyancy for the rest of the advisors? So I see everybody smiling at my ankle biters.
Yeah.
So we all know what they are, right? So now we need to find ways to make them more profitable, and we've actually uncovered new assets too through this exercise.
Great. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, this is Tom. I have a thank you. I want to say thank you for allowing me to participate. And I have a blind spot. Love to ask a question, maybe socialize it, but we could probably take it offline. I'm trying to get my hands, and I owe you some data, by the way. So I had a couple pieces of data I owe you. I'm trying to get my hands wrapped around capacity in terms of activity. And maybe the lens I'm looking at would be over a month. How many calls, it's kind of a rhetorical question, but if anyone has any feedback, how many calls could an advisor take, inbound, outbound, over a month? And how many referrals and appointments can an advisor handle, right? As I go down to phase one, I'm just gonna have to wait, right, and test and learn, but I have to peek around the corner in terms of adding to staff, in terms of capacity. I love all the data you see. That's going to be so helpful, but my blind spot's going to be, when do I add 12 more people to the program? And the only way I'm going to know is based upon activity. Anyone have any comments on that? Inbound, outbound, number of appointments, number of referrals coming in?
I think these are the kind of things that some of you who run these programs can probably share offline to the extent to which you're willing to do that, and help each other sort of grow and develop into better managers.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Could be something to socialize, thinking about tracking too, to add to your metrics.
That's right. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
And as we go further, right now, as you can see, we're having a little trouble getting people to provide some top line things.
Yeah.
But as we get rolling, there'll be interest and thirst for drilling down deeper and sharing deeper into some of these metrics. And the objective, of course, is not just to count beans, but eventually to try to identify best practices under different conditions. And so that's where we're going with the research, and we will be reaching out to you, to those of you who haven't participated yet, to participate, and then going forward next year, maybe going deeper as well as wider. Any other comments or questions from the audience or the panel? Really good discussion, I think. Thanks for all of you sitting around the virtual table for your interaction and the interest from the broader participants in cyberspace. Of course, we couldn't do this without the sponsorship of our sponsors, Ameriprise, Asset Map, and the Standard. Thank you so much for your financial support and your thought leadership. Peter, you want to add anything?
Just again, on the sponsors, we really appreciate that. I would say, to all the panelists that aren't sponsors and the attendees, thank the sponsors when you can. That's why we're able to share this great information and give them a shot at your business, because they've been great partners and really want to help you and support the industry. So that enlightening discussion, as you said, and I just want to take the opportunity to wish everyone happy holidays to you and your families and a healthy and prosperous 2021. We look forward to reconnecting physically, virtually, some combination of the two next year.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay warm.